Yeah, sure. On करो. Okay. Good morning, friends. Welcome to the new classes of human geography. And if you talk about human geography, just before I start with it, number of things. First thing, those who are watching online, customary जो चीज़ करनी है सबको पता है, लाइक दबाओ, बीच बीच में बोलते रहो कि वाह क्या पढ़ा रहे हैं, because the YouTube algorithm requires all those kind of things, interactions. Okay, so if you talk about human geography, number of things we need to know. About human geography. So first I will just tell you what we are going to do today. We are first going to look into the nature of human geography. And this will be the major part of our discussion today. Then we will also little bit look into the strategy in the second part of how to essentially do it. Okay. So I hope all of you have seen the paper of this year. So if you talk about, there was essay paper and the 4 GS papers are already done. And if you talk about 24th, as you know, there is the optional paper as well. Hopefully UPSC will be kind enough to the geography optional. Okay, so agar just if I look into the paper, number of questions I find, and like for example in the essay paper there was one question which was, or one topic which was this one: visionary decision making happens at an intersection of intuition and logic. So again देखेंगे बाद में. For example, if I talk about our human geography, we'll be studying perspectives in human geography, and within perspectives in human geography we will learn about something which we call it as the behavioral approach. So what essentially is the behavior? What are the factors which are essentially determining behavior? How decision making is essentially done? So number of things we'll be talking about. So there was enough, if you talk about feed, which we'll be discussing, on the basis of which you would have written a very good essay here. Similarly, there was section B, and in section B there was one essay which talked about a society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. So again we will see perspectives में एक और topic है हमारा syllabus का, and this topic is referred to as the welfare approach. And in welfare approach we will see that the basic idea of the welfare approach is essentially mapping of inequality. And to understand inequality, first thing you definitely have to understand is what is essentially social injustice and the spatial distribution of goods and bads. So again, there was lots of, if you talk about raw feed, which was available. Now, if I just look into paper one of the topics of the syllabus is history, And in history, there was one question. First question itself, explain the role of geographical factors towards development of ancient India. Okay, so there is one topic of the syllabus. In paper 2, it is cultural setting में एक topic है. That is the name of the topic is historical perspectives of Indian society. So we will look into how various, if you talk about races, etc., and what cultural factors they brought and what type of civilizations essentially they established into. Similarly, there was other things like there were more direct human geography questions, like bring out the socio-economic effect of the introduction of railways in different countries of the world. So again, there is economic geography and there is a topic of transport geography. So we will see, like for example, one of the key concepts of transport geography is the concept of time, space, convergence. So what the transportation modes essentially do, they converge time and space, they reduce the factor of time and space, and thus things are brought relatively near to each other, and how then it ultimately affects the various aspects of the society, even which includes the economy. Similarly, there was another question like consequences of climate change on the food security in tropical countries. You can understand direct है human geography का question. Similarly, why the world today confronted with the crisis of availability of and excess of fresh water resources. ठीक है, so ये जो perspective होगा, like for example, this is a general question majority of the people will be able to write, but this perspective that we'll later talk about in the topic of resources, I is equal to Pat. Again, very few people will have this such kind of perspective to write. Then another things like why southwest monsoon is called Purvaiya in Bhojpur region. How has this directional seasonal wind system influenced the cultural ethos of the region? Okay. So again, you know, because ultimately why it is referred to as Purvaiya, because mostly the precipitation that is coming here, it is brought by the easterly jet stream from the Bay of Bengal, and essentially thus the name here, the easterly winds are dominating even in the southwest monsoon season. And how it affects the cultural ethos, number of things we'll talk about. Just one example, we will see later that when we'll talk about the rural settlements, in rural settlements we'll talk about the morphology of the village, how the village is essentially located, the land use of the village. And if you talk about, for example, we will see the villages, particularly in this region, they are located in such a manner that the lower caste, that is the Shudras, their houses are never kept towards east. In the villages, they'll never be found towards east, because it was believed that ultimately if the winds come from there, what will happen? They will become impure. So number of such examples we will see in geography, and how ultimately the physical geography is affecting the human parameters. Similarly, ठीक है, मतलब 6 क्वेश्चन मैंने इसलिए नहीं लिया because it is more related with physical geography. ठीक है, that is why I am not highlighted. I am just highlighting here the questions which were more related with human geography. ठीक है. Similarly, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its values in modern India? So देखेंगे number of things like how the demographic transition ultimately occurs. One of the topics that we'll be studying is the demographic transition. And one important feature of the demographic transition is that as the demographic transition occurs, there are simultaneous changes in the socio-economic status of the society. So within the demographic transition, there are several types of transitions which are inbuilt. One type of transition which is inbuilt within the demographic transition is the various type of social transitions. Like for example, what is happening with the family values, what is happening with the family size, what is happening with the status of women, number of things, and what is happening with these many of these cultural institutions, how they are essentially changing. Okay, so again you had enough feed to write about that. Explain why suicide among young women is increasing in Indian society, again related with the demographic transition, the rise of individualism, etc., etc. Number of things are there which could have talked about. Similarly, child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones. Discuss its impact on the socialization of children. ठीक है, तो अभी मैंने एक कंसेप्ट की बात की, टाइम स्पेस कन्वर्जेंस. So when there is growth of technology, what essentially happens, there is the concept of time space convergence which is taking place. ठीक है, but simultaneously जब हम अपनी classes में पढ़ेंगे तो we will also talk about another simultaneous concept which will be taking place with the growth of the society, which is time space distancing. Time space distancing. So as technology grows, what will happen? People will also move away from each other because of number of reasons. So again, there was a concept which you could have essentially used, even not directly, even if you didn't want to use the term, maybe the term is technical, then also you had that idea, what is the basic issue, and it is not that it is happening here only, it is happening in all over the society. Okay. Similarly, what are the main features of the Vedic society and religion? Do you think some of the features are still prevailing in the Indian society? So again, the same topic that we will be talking about, the historical perspectives of Indian society. We will see how various races in India have arrived. Whether if you talk about the earliest races like the Negroids, or if you talk about, or in India there were Negritos, if you talk about, or later there was arrival of the Proto-Australoids. If you talk about further later, if you talk about, there came the Mediterraneans. Further later, if you talk about, there was the others like the Western Brachycephals who arrived in India, and finally there was the arrival of the Nordics. Okay, each of them we will see they brought certain cultural elements with them, and these cultural elements, they find those cultural elements particularly will be interested in which are still prevalent in the Indian society. Okay. Similarly, if you talk about, obviously you can understand how the technological changes influence the Indian society. So we will see relation of technology with socio-economic features of the society. There is a framework within geography in which we write how these technological changes are influencing the Indian society. Like for example, think one of the technological change which has led to, or which is very prevalent today, can we say it is related with the growth in transportation and communication? And has it shortened the world? Has it led to time-space convergence? And then how essentially it is affecting the Indian society? Can we say the effect in the Indian society can be thought of in two manners? One, if you think the society is pure, then what is happening? Can we say there is change which is taking place, which is mixing of various cultural values, and this will be seen in a more negative sense. There is degradation of the social cultures which is taking place. On the other hand, there is another perspective. If we see society as dynamic phenomena, and society is something which keeps on learning, which keeps on following new traditions, then if you talk about the phenomena of these technological changes, what they are doing, they are essentially enriching the society, they are modifying the society, which is a natural process. Okay. So again, there was enough to write about how did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India, and what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression. Okay, there is no doubt there is certain things which you need to know ultimately, the revolts etc. examples who already मैं expect करता हूँ कि आपने पढ़ रखा है, ठीक है, being a GS student. But there are several other things which many you will not study in GS, for example. So we'll talk about that ultimately how there was wave after operations which have occurred over the tribal people who were, in a way, if you talk about, for example, the proto-Australoids, who were the first arrivals to have come into the Indian subcontinent, and ultimately what happened to them, and how, if you talk about the phenomena of existentialism, ultimately takes its toll and determines the even the present thinking. ठीक है. So in perspectives in human geography हम पढ़ेंगे एक टॉपिक है humanism, and humanism में we'll be talking about all these phenomena. Like one key topic that we'll be talking about is existential phenomenology. ठीक है. So again there was this question. Then if you talk about comment on the resource potentials of long coastline of India and highlight the status of natural hazard preparedness in these areas. Again, a direct question which is part and parcel of the human geography. Assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in the forest regions of India. Again, we will talk about what is the wilderness concept, for example. We will particularly talk about one topic of political ecology, and we'll see what is wilderness and how ultimately it has influence on the number of things, including the socio-economic features. Then if you talk about why did humans development fail to keep pace with economic development in India, again there is a concept, simple सा concept, बाद में भी पढ़ेंगे demographic transition का, and we will see जब भी demographic transition होता है तो then in demographic transition first to decline is the death rate. After a gap there will be decline in the fertility rate. ठीक है. So we will see that actually why there is first decline in the death rate, because death rate is essentially related to the economic development, while fertility, if you talk about, fertility is a phenomena which is more related with the social development. So always there is a gap between economic and social development. We will look into the reasons of this gap later on in the classes. Okay. So again, using this conception, you could have written a very beautiful answer related with this. From being a net food importer in 1960, India has emerged as a net food exporter to the world. Provide reasons. Again, a direct question from human geography. Does urbanization lead to more segregation or marginalization of poor in the Indian metropolises? So one of the topics of the syllabus is the problems of urbanization, and within problems of urbanization, one of the things that we study is the urban poverty. Okay. So again, it is part and parcel of that. Why is caste identity in India both fluid and static? So again, we will see fluid को explain करना है, so you can definitely talk about the idea of time space convergence, mobility, how essentially it has increased, how the socio-economic structure of the society, if you talk about, has changed. And again, when we have to talk about the static features, still if you talk about the geography plays a role. ठीक है. There is एक concept है हमारे syllabus में of determinism and possibilism. So there will always be some determinism and there will always be a possibilism. There will be, the reality will always be somewhere in the middle of these. ठीक है. Similarly, if you talk about, discuss the impact of the post-liberal economy on the ethnic identity and communalism in India. So again, there is a direct question in the paper 2 last topic, contemporary issues, the impact of globalization on the Indian economy and society. So again, there was lots of questions which were more related with human geography. Paper 2, it is more of polity and IR, but still there is few things which we could have ultimately gathered from human geography. Like for example, the states in India seem to be reluctant to empower urban local bodies both functionally as well as financially. Okay. So in our syllabus, regional development and planning of paper 2, there is essentially a topic that is referred, or it is the Panchayati Raj and decentralized planning. So when we are studying the Panchayati Raj and the decentralized planning, we also look into what are the problems that the Panchayati Raj and the decentralized planning are facing, and essentially we talk about the financial weakness which is there, etc., etc. Similarly, the crucial aspect of development process has been inadequate, has paid inadequate attention to human resource development in India. Suggest measures that can address this inadequacy. So again, we will see, for example, in population geography, cultural setting paper 2 का एक topic है, where we will be talking about a concept which is referred to as demographic dividend. ठीक है. So demographic dividend में basically हम यही बात करेंगे कि how India is set to have a demographic dividend, but how we are unable to realize our demographic dividend, how it has become a demographic fatigue. There is also a concept of demographic fatigue. So demographic fatigue क्या होता है? It is a concept whereby ultimately the governments, they stop caring. The population becomes so large and unmanageable that they ultimately stop caring. So we will see how there seems to have developed a kind of demographic fatigue in case of many developing countries, including India, and it was very, very visible. For example, if you look into, हम सबने देखा COVID-19. Did we see that in COVID-19 the government didn't care? People kept on walking barefoot to their villages, and government didn't care. So there was essentially a demographic fatigue which had developed. ठीक है, so देखेंगे number of things. There will be lots of raw material which you will have beside what you have studied. You will be studying in your GS part. E-governance as a critical tool of governance has ushered in effectiveness, transparency, and accountability in the government. What inadequacies hamper the enhancement of these features? ठीक है, so there is transport communication topic in our syllabus, and there we also have to study about these e-governance and other things, how technology, IT has essentially affected. Indian diaspora has scaled new heights in the West. Describe its economic and political benefits for India. So one topic of our syllabus is that of geopolitics. Okay? And again we will talk about the geopolitics related with India and what India requires, what advantages, for example, essentially India has. So again, there was something which was very directly what we will be studying in the classes. Question number 9. ठीक है. Virus conflict, there is definitely yes. Question number 9 was also there. क्योंकि देखो मैंने उसको इसलिए नहीं लिया था, although we have to study, no doubt about this, because it was not directly mentioned in the syllabus. ठीक है. So others are mentioned directly in the syllabus. Explain the constitutional perspective of gender justice with the help of relevant constitutional provisions and the case laws. ठीक है. Perspectives in human geography में एक idea है which is not directly mentioned in the syllabus, but we will be definitely talking about, and this is the idea of postmodern development. And within postmodern development there was birth of an approach, the growth of an approach which became very dominant approach at that time, and this is essentially, this approach was feminism. And we'll talk about number of issues, what were the reasons of the growth of feminism, how the feminism, if you talk about, of the developing countries is different from the feminism of the developed world. Okay? So again, then development and welfare schemes for the vulnerable by its nature are discriminatory in approach. Do you agree? Give reasons for your answer. So हमारे syllabus में एक topic है radicalism, and within radicalism we will study about Marxism. Marxism provides what? It provides a critique of the present model of development which is governed by capitalism. ठीक है. So we will see what are the problems which are there and how ultimately they need to be tackled. There was a framework which you could have used. Skill development programs have succeeded in increasing human resource supply to various sectors. In this context of statement lies the linkages between education, skill and employment. Again, you know, we have to study about agriculture, we have to study about various other type of industries, and again lots of examples from there you could have taken to write essentially this answer, although it was not directly which we'll be talking about, बट नंबर ऑफ एग्जाम्पल्स वहां से हम पिकअप कर सकते हैं. Then expansion and strengthening of NATO and the stronger US-Europe strategic partnership works well for India. What is your opinion about this statement? Give reasons and examples to support your answer. So we'll talk about paper 1 mein there is a topic of models and theories, and this topic of models and theories essentially tells us about how there is the geopolitics of the world going on, and how, if you talk about this geopolitics of the world, is still determined by the earlier ideas of pivot. So we'll see that the concept of pivot was essentially given by, if you talk about in the theory of Heartland by Mackinder, and later this same concept was used by Spikeman in his Rimland theory. And ultimately, if you talk about, we will see how this concept of pivot continues to dominate the geopolitics of the world. And in this context, where India stands, how we could have ultimately, why India, if you talk about particularly in recent times, there is a leaning towards the West. We have become more closer to the West. Okay, so we will see. Then again, you can understand C is an important component of the cosmos. Discuss in light of the above statement the role of international monetary organization in protecting environment and enhancing maritime safety and security. So again, इसका भी एक पूरा theoretical framework है जो हम बात करेंगे. Like for example, when we'll discuss the Heartland theory, we'll discuss the context of the Heartland theory, and before that we will discuss also the ideas of Mahan. Okay, so Mahan was a geopolitical scientist who essentially believed that the world was to be controlled by the sea-based forces. So what are essentially the advantages, if you talk about, of having a strong navy, for example? Okay, so again, there was a theoretical framework which we will be later studying. And paper 3, you know, it is like कि पूरा का पूरा human geography ही होता है, almost. It is something like that, paper 3. So if you talk about faster economic growth requires increased share of manufacturing sector in GDP, particularly the MSMEs. Comment on the present policies of the government in this regard. अब देखो, बहुत सारे लोगों को policies पता होंगी, but very few people will have actually understanding of how these MSMEs, the significance of the MSMEs, if you talk about. So I still remember a few days back, I was arguing with one of my friends. Obviously, आजकल बहुत सारे लोग they are pro government. So again, he was giving me lots of ultimately examples etc. of how government is in favor of people. He was also giving me a theory of essentially how government is actually first trying to promote capitalism, because ultimately this is the only thing which will be able to promote the fast economic growth in the country. Just the only thing I countered him was, because I am a geographer, so I have studied about the knowledge theory of development. So the knowledge theory of development says that ultimately the development which is taking place, it is outcome of technological innovations. And these technological innovations, if you talk about, majority of them, almost all of these technological innovations have been done by either individuals or small firms. If you even look at the present data of Europe and North America, even China, majority of the patents which are filed essentially, these are done by the small firms. ठीक है, सो वी विल सी क्यों स्मॉल फर्म्स करती हैं. बिकॉज अगर सपोज बड़ी फर्म है तो बड़ी फर्म को किसी नए आइडिया में इन्वेस्ट करने में बहुत ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट नहीं है. दे डोंट वांट टू टेक द रिस्क. इन बिग फर्म्स जर्नलिस्ट आर एसेंशियली एट द टॉप ऑफ द हायरार्की, so they also cannot appreciate the technicality may be related with that particular innovation, and as a result, in majority of the cases what will happen, these big firms will not follow that particular creative idea. But जिसका आइडिया होगा वो तो उसका ब्रेन चाइल्ड है, एंड अल्टीमेटली वो क्या करेगा, वो उसको परस्यू करेगा, कैसे भी करेगा, he'll pursue. And many of these, you know, ultimately they become the startups. आज की डेट में हम स्टार्टअप्स की बात करें, ठीक है. सो ये स्टार्टअप्स जो हैं, बड़े स्टार्टअप्स जो बन गए, पहले क्या थे, दे स्टार्टेड एज दीज MSMEs, ठीक है, so we'll look into that. So again, what is the status of digitalization in Indian economy? So we'll talk about again the growth of IT in India and what are the problems related with that. How does e-technology help farmers in production and marketing of agricultural produce? Again, a direct question which we'll be discussing in the classes. What is the role of technology in agriculture development, for example? ठीक है, state the objectives and measures of land reforms in India. Direct question, direct topic which is mentioned in the syllabus of agriculture. Similarly, if you talk about dam failures are always catastrophic, especially on the downstream side, resulting in a colossal loss of life and property. Analyze the various causes of dam failures. Give two examples of large dam failures. Again, a more direct question from the disaster management topic, which is part of the contemporary issues. Then if you talk about winning of hearts and minds in terrorism affected areas is essential step in restoring the trust of the population. Discuss the measures adopted by the government in this respect as a part of the conflict resolution in Jammu and Kashmir. Again, there is specific which you need to know, which is more related with the current affairs. But there is also the context. And in our syllabus, if you know, there is a topic in contemporary issues again, and this topic is external terrorism. And we will see what are the factors essentially which have led to external terrorism. And if you understand the factors which are leading to such kind of terrorism, can I say I have also got the solutions? ठीक है, so again वो याद करना वो सारे points वो easy हो जाता. Most of the unemployment in India is structural in nature. Examine the methodology adopted to compute unemployment in the country and suggest improvements. So again we will see ये point structural क्यों है इंडिया में, ठीक है. So when we will be talking about essentially industries, ठीक है, and industrial policies particularly, तो वहां पर particularly हम बात करेंगे of unemployment, ठीक है. There are two topics of the syllabus. One is the agrarian crisis and the second one is the industrial crisis. So again we will talk about the employment, how in India manufacturing was never able to become the main sector. India directly jumped. जो रोस्टोव इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ मॉडल होता है उसमें स्टेजेस होती हैं, एंड व्हाट इंडिया डिड, इंडिया essentially jumped the stages. So from agriculture, what happened ultimately, the major sector in India, it became services, and we will see that services is something which is sorry सूरज, okay, so we will see that the services will be is a type of if you talk about economic sector which is never able to provide large scale employment. ठीक है, तो देखेंगे कैसे, अगर अभी की बात करें तो इंडियन गवर्नमेंट इज ट्राइंग टू प्रमोट सर्टेन सेक्टर्स which are more labor intensive in nature. Okay, so trying to correct the structural problem in the society. Again, make in India, ठीक है, पेपर पे है लेकिन है. Okay, so again a direct question, explain the changes in cropping pattern. Cropping pattern is a topic which is directly mentioned in the topic of human geography. Then what are the direct and indirect subsidies provided to farm sector in India? We'll talk about the problems of Indian agriculture, how ultimately if you talk about globalization has affected Indian agriculture. When you're talking about globalization and Indian agriculture, you cannot skip the WTO part. You'll have to talk about the various type of subsidies which are provided and how they are affecting the globalization and Indian agriculture. The adoption of electric vehicles is rapidly growing worldwide. How do electric vehicles contribute to reducing carbon emissions, and what are the key benefits they offer compared to the traditional combustion engines engine vehicles. So we'll talk about, if we talk about environmental degradation, which is part of the contemporary issues, and there particularly our focus will be on the pollution aspect. ठीक है, so pollution में particularly our focus जो मैं class में करवाता हूँ, like I particularly deal with the metropolitan cities and the related pollution in these areas. And one major segment we will see of the metropolitan cities pollution is the vehicles. So how there is growth in the vehicles, what has fueled these various kinds of demands, etc. Again, there is a context in which you can very well understand the question. Then again, the National Wetland Conservation Program, again more related with environmental part. IPCC, again, it is related with the environmental part. Again, you can understand the internal, what are the internal security challenges being faced by India. Number of type of internal security challenges we'll talk about. Like for example, directly we'll talk about the terrorism concept and the related internal security challenges which are there. But tell me, can we say internal security के बहुत सारे dimensions होते हैं? Yes or no? Can we say there is economic security is also part of the internal security, or energy security, if you talk about, is also essentially part of the internal security? So many dimensions which we'll be studying as a part of this human geography. Okay, so that is there. इस बार पेपर 4 में भी था कुछ. So international aid is an accepted form of helping resource challenged nations. ठीक है, so again we will see कि इंटरनेशनल एड का कंसेप्ट कैसे आता है. ठीक है, what were essentially the reasons? Was it actually related with the ethics? What do they really wanted to benefit the developing countries? And even if they wanted to benefit the developing countries, in what sense they wanted to benefit the developing countries? Was it related with their own good, or was it related just for it? Was it a kind of charity which they were doing? So we will talk about that, particularly when we'll talk about the population geography. Similarly, there was one more question in paper 4 which was directly from our syllabus. It is mentioned the concept of social capital. It is a topic, special topic which we have to study, and not only social capital but various theories, theoretical concepts related with social capital also we will be studying in the classes. Okay, so again you can understand that there were so many questions all over the paper, all over the topics that we had to study. Okay, so these questions essentially concern me as a teacher. I hope that these questions also concern you as a student. करते हैं? Obviously अगर करते हैं तो congratulations, because you have taken the right step to study human geography. Human geography will be there to ultimately help you out, provide variety of type of perspectives in these topics. Okay, and this is the story every year. It is not only this year. It is a story which is repeated every year, because ultimately we will see it is very diverse. Human geography is so much diverse. Unfortunately, what has happened, geography, if you ask someone about geography, तो वो तुम्हें सबसे पहले बोला कि तुझसे पूछो geography क्या होता, तो he'll talk about नदी, पहाड़, etc. etc. ठीक है, mainly focus will be on what? Physical geography. But we will see कि अगर हम आज के geography में जाएं, तो what has happened, particularly a change has taken place, and today it is actually human geography which dominates the academic circles. ठीक है, within geography, it is the human geographers who are more dominant today. And human geography essentially forms larger part of the geography curriculum compared to if you talk about what is physical geography for. And the same thing, if you look into, it is also reflected in our syllabus. We will later see that our syllabus, almost if you talk about 65% of the syllabus is human geography. Okay, so this is what we are going to start with. This is what we are going to embark upon. So I hope you can understand the gravity of the topic that we are going to deal with in the next 2.5 and 3 months, where not only directly, if you talk about 65% of your optional is going to be tackled, but you can already see how much large part of your GS will also be covered. Okay? Even if not directly, it will always be there to provide perspectives, variety of type of perspectives, theoretical frameworks, which can be used to write good answers. Okay? So that is what we are talking about. That is our human geography. Okay? Okay. So let us start discussing. So if we talk about essentially the human geography, तो सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन तो यही होगा, what is human geography? What is human geography? So what is essentially human geography? Okay, so he's saying that what he's trying to say is study of human environment relationship. ठीक है, स्टडी ऑफ द ह्यूमन एंड एनवायरमेंट रिलेशनशिप. बट अगेन थोड़ा सा वेग है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे जो सब्जेक्ट्स हैं सेम थिंग क्लेम कर सकते हैं. सोशियोलॉजी भी तो यही क्लेम कर सकता है ना कि वो भी पढ़ रहा है, बिकॉज सोसाइटी इफ यू टॉक अबाउट इट इज ऑल्सो प्रोडक्ट ऑफ एनवायरमेंट. सो व्हाट एल्स, और क्या हो सकता है, क्या ऐड कर सकते हैं इसमें? व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज करेक्ट. ठीक है, कैन आई से स्टडी ऑफ ह्यूमन एनवायरमेंट रिलेशनशिप. इनफैक्ट एक चेंज हुआ है सोसाइटी में. पहले अगर हम सोचें तो कैन आई से द सोसाइटी में टेक्नोलॉजिकल डेवलपमेंट वाज एट लोअर लेवल. यस और नो? And if the society's technological development was at lower level, can I say mobility in the society will be less? Yes or no? लोग कम मोबाइल होंगे. एंड मेनली एक्टिविटी कौन सी थी? What was the economic activity most of the people were pursuing? Was it agriculture? ठीक है. So ultimately जो लोगों का जो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ टाइम था, can we say that this majority of time of the people they spent with the environment? Yes or no? And if they were spending this majority of time with the environment, can we say it is but obvious that the core of the study would revolve around this human and environment relationship? ठीक है. But can I say कि society में change हुआ है, and what has happened is there number of things have changed. One thing which has changed is technological development. There is now more technological development. Simultaneous with technological development, you can understand population growth हो गया. There is high population growth. And if there is population growth, tell me, will there be competition for resources? And can I say who will be who will be able to more succeed in this competition? Can we say one way to achieve such success will be if I become more, if you talk about perfect in what I am doing? And can we say it will be related with specialization? ठीक है. So सोसाइटी में दो चेंजेस हुए. एक तो स्पेशलाइजेशन बढ़ गया, एंड इफ यू टॉक अबाउट देयर इज ऑल्सो टेक्नोलॉजिकल डेवलपमेंट विच हैज टेकन प्लेस. ठीक है. नाउ कैन आई से कि पहले एक गांव होता था और उस गांव की जो ज्यादातर जरूरतें थी वो वहीं पर पूरी हो जाती थी. यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड अबाउट द गांधीयन कंसेप्ट ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंट विलेजेस एज अ सेल्फ यूनिट. ठीक है. But today, can I say with specialization, also there is also the need of the society has grown. So can we say this has resulted in higher mobility? Do we find today that the places are more connected with each other? Yes or no? There is more connection between the places. So आज के डेट में human geography has actually little bit moved beyond this human and environment relationship. The focus has also become today of the society relationship, या फिर हम इसको ऐसे भी बोल सकते हैं, better term is actually you write human society. So human is not just affected essentially by the environment, human is also affected by the society. So today human geography is not just human and environment relationship, it is also human and society relationship. And जब भी हम ज्योग्राफी की बात करते हैं, ठीक है, ऑब्वियस सी बात है यार कि ज्योग्राफी सोचते ही मेरे दिमाग में ज्योग्राफी की, जब स्कूल में होते थे तो जो ज्योग्राफी की क्लास में केवल एक ही मजा होता था हमारा, और वो मजा होता था वो एटलस में गेम खेलना, फाइंडिंग द प्लेसेस, ठीक है, बैक बेंचर्स के लिए बहुत मजेदार चीज थी वो. सो again, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about geography, it is essentially what the atlas or distribution of geographical phenomena or phenomena in space. ठीक है? So no geography can be without this. So when we are talking about study of human environment relationship and human society relationship, we can also add that here we are focused upon how these are distributed in geographical space. How these are distributed in the geographical space. तो एक डेफिनेशन लिखते हैं ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी की. So इसको लिखो, ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी इज अ ब्रांच ऑफ नॉलेज which seeks to venture descriptions of and explanations for the uneven distribution of human activity across the surface of the earth. So what I have done in this definition, I have summed this as human activity. ठीक है, एक और चीज देख सकते हो इस डेफिनेशन में, हमने लिखा है क्या, डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ एंड एक्सप्लेनेशन फॉर. ठीक है, एज यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड द टर्म ज्योग्राफी, एक तरह से जब ज्योग्राफी हुआ करता था तो ज्योग्राफी यूज्ड टू बी मोर डिस्क्रिप्टिव. ठीक है, द टर्म ज्योग्राफी एक्चुअली वाज कॉइन्ड इन द एंशिएंट पीरियड बाय द ग्रीक ज्योग्राफर्स. ठीक है, सो उस समय जो स्टडी होती थी इट वाज मोर डिस्क्रिप्टिव इन नेचर. तो यहां पर जियो का मतलब क्या है, इट इज द अर्थ सरफेस, एंड ग्राफी इज एसेंशियली व्हाट, इट इज डिस्क्रिप्शन. ठीक है, बट टुडे इट डजंट होल्ड्स ट्रू. We will see कि at the end of the medieval period and the birth of the modern period saw growth of a phenomena which is referred to as Renaissance. And this phenomena ultimately led to a growth of a new society in a Western world, which was dominated by the ideas of rationalism. Okay? So, what became the base of the society? It became rationalism. In fact, this rationalism we will see, it came to be known as modernism. Okay? So, that means in a society, if you are modern, that means you have to be rational. You have to be a rational thinker. That means you have to always ask a question, why? If you cannot do so, then essentially you are not modern, you are backward. Okay? So again, this phenomena essentially also influenced the studies, the knowledges. Okay? In fact, you can understand science why became the most important academic disciplines, why they enjoy so much of big status. One of the reasons was they were essentially more rational, because they always answered the question of why. In fact, they even simplified this question by, in fact, idea of the cause-effect relationship, which was the methodology which was adopted by Newton. So it became the base of the knowledges. And so has it has happened in case of geography. So that is why here we have written, you can see, description of. Okay? So we are describing human activity. But we have also written and explanation for. That means it is not just pure description. Human geography is also explaining. In simple terms, whenever we are talking about explanation, it becomes what? The term that we use for it is scientific. Okay? So human geography is essentially what? It is a science. A branch of knowledge, matlab it is a science. Okay? आगे लिखो. In other words, human geography seeks to describe and explain variations from place to place in which human beings have inhabited the face of the earth. Okay? So here what we are focusing upon, we are saying that human geography का sentence का essence क्या है? Human geography is essentially what? It is a spatial science. Okay? We are trying to find out how variety of human activities, they are different in the various parts of the earth from place to place. अभी देखेंगे एक concept है geography के अंदर place का. ठीक है? So we will see that how essentially it has become the dominant concept of geography, particularly human geography today. ठीक है? So this is what we essentially mean by the human geography. एक और line I just want to dictate. Next, change the paragraph. उसमें लिखो. We might say that the mission of human geography is to describe and explain how and why human beings locate themselves and their activities unevenly over the earth's surface. unevenly over the earth's surface, comma, create distinctive place, comma, generate various kinds of ecological footprints, comma, connect places into webs, and networks, and networks, comma, and invent regions of various scale. ठीक है. So you can understand here in this definition we have used number of terms, and like for example one term which we have used, can you see, is locate. Another term which we have used, can you see, is place. Another term which we have used is ecological footprint. Another term which we have used here is connect. Another term which we have used here is region. So read this definition again. So it is saying, we might say that the mission of human geography is to describe and explain how and why human beings locate themselves and their activities unevenly over the earth's surface, create distinctive places, generate various kinds of ecological footprints, connect places into webs and networks, and invent regions of various scales. ठीक है. So this definition incorporates, if you talk about what has been talked about as by the National Council of Geographic Education of USA. National Council of Geographic Education of USA, and also Association of American Geographers. These are two important geographical organizations of US. ठीक है. So according to them or according to these organizations, लिख लो इसको. So according to these organizations, human geography is built around five key concerns. And if we talk about these 5 key concerns, first important concern is location. Second important concept is place. Third important concept, if we talk about, is interaction between people and environment. That means human environment relationship. Then if you talk about The fourth, if you talk about, is movement. And fifth, if you talk about, is the region. Okay. So these are the 5 central concerns within, if you talk about, the idea of, or within this discipline or sub-discipline of ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी. ठीक है. सो अभी इनको हम पांचों को डिटेल में देखते हैं, व्हाट दीज कंसेप्ट्स एसेंशियली आर, एंड सेवरल सच स्मॉल स्मॉल रिलेटेड कंसेप्ट्स भी साथ में देखते रहेंगे. ठीक है. But just before I continue, now we are done with the definition. This is a very, the last one which we talked about is a very comprehensive, if you talk about, definition of human geography. ठीक है. बट एसेंशियली फिर से आते हैं, वाई ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी. ठीक है, व्हाट तो हमने बात कर लिया, बट वाई ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी. ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी पढ़ने की जरूरत क्या है? ठीक है. यू हैव must have heard about a concept, and if you talk about this concept, it is the concept of Anthropocene. सुना है? So essentially Anthropocene is the time period in the Earth's geological history when we find that the impact of the human beings have become very, very dominant. ठीक है? It has begun to dominate. And essentially, it is so much so that human beings, you can call them as the most superior species. One of the reasons for this has been the intellectual capacity which has been developed by the human being. ठीक है. Although हम ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि intellectual capacity humans में ही ज़्यादा होती है, सबसे ज़्यादा. ठीक है, but on an average it is so. Individually तो नहीं कह सकते, you know. Sometimes we see animals are more smart than the human beings. But still, so essentially what we find that it is because of the intellectual capacity we are different species. So within geography, अगर मैं geography की बात करूं, तो विद इन ज्योग्राफी का अगर भी डेफिनेशन हम लिख रहे होते तो ज्योग्राफी बेसिकली क्या है? इट इज स्टडी ऑफ ह्यूमन एनवायरमेंट रिलेशनशिप. दिस इज व्हाट इज ज्योग्राफी इज. ठीक है. बट यहां पर ह्यूमन को देखने के 2 तरीके हो सकते हैं. एक तरीका ह्यूमन को देखने का यह हो सकता है विच इज बेस्ड अपॉन डिटर्मिनिज्म. डिटर्मिनिज्म क्या कहता है? डिटर्मिनिज्म इज एन आइडिया. बाद में मैं लिखवा दूंगा इसको और पर्सपेक्टिव में अलग से आएगा पूरा डिटेल में. तो डिटर्मिनिज्म इज एन आइडिया विच सेज दैट देयर इज एब्सेंस ऑफ फ्री विल. वट एवर हम जो भी कर रहे हैं, इट इज ऑल प्री डिटरमाइंड बाई सर्टन लॉज. विल जस्ट आर ओबेइंग सर्टन लॉज. ठीक है. एंड इफ इट इज सो, कैन आई से कि फिर तो ह्यूमन बीइंग्स और अदर स्पीशीज में कोई डिफरेंस ही नहीं है? Yes or no? If we are governed by the environmental laws, natural laws, then can we say here humans is equal to other species? And to some extent it is true also. Has Darwin proved that ultimately human beings have also evolved like any other species? We have also evolved. That means we are also subjected to the same laws which other species are subjected to. Like for example, normally mammals का extinction 5 to 10 million years के अंदर होता है. Can I say कि इसका मतलब है कि human beings भी extinct हो जाएंगे एक दिन? There will be extinction of the human species as well. So we are also subjected to the similar kind of laws. Like in nature there is a law of carrying capacity. Can I say we are also affected by the carrying capacity? अगर किसी एरिया में पॉपुलेशन बढ़ जाए और फूड कम हो जाए, can I say will it give rise to number of problems including accelerated deaths? There will be famines. So we are also subjected to such loss. ठीक है? So essentially here, if it is so, can I say a human will be treated as any other species? And thus the focus, if it is so, the focus would entirely shift upon what? The focus would entirely shift upon finding those environmental laws which are governing the world. ठीक है? So then the focus will be discovery of environmental laws governing the world. And can I say this discovery is essentially the core of what we call it as the physical geography. It is essentially the core of what is referred to as the physical geography. ठीक है? बट फिर भी हम ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी पढ़ रहे हैं. And again you can understand human geography, there is also a philosophy which is referred to as metaphysical humanism. So there is a philosophy like determinism, there is another philosophy which is referred to as the metaphysical humanism. And बाद में भी देखेंगे ह्यूमनिज्म पढ़ते समय. तो फिर मेटाफिजिकल ह्यूमनिज्म सिंपल टर्म्स में अगर बात की जाए तो एक्चुअली ये कंसेप्ट ओरिजिनेट होता है रिलीजन से. एंड दिस आइडिया सिंपली बिलीव्स कि भाई एक दिन भगवान को अल्टीमेटली उन्होंने सोचा कि मज़े करते हैं, लेजर करते हैं, छुट्टी लेते हैं. तो भगवान ने छुट्टी ली एंड अल्टीमेटली गॉड डिसाइडेड कि यार छुट्टी है, बोर हो रहा हूँ, लेट अस डू समथिंग इंटरेस्टिंग, तो कुछ बढ़िया बनाते हैं. एंड वो बढ़िया बनाने के लिए अल्टीमेटली वो बढ़िया भगवान ने क्या बनाया? ह्यूमन बीइंग्स. ठीक है? तो कैन यू अंडरस्टैंड? इससे ही पता चलता है गॉड ऑल्सो हैज लिमिटेशंस. At best, he could come up with the human beings. So ultimately, there was human beings. So what is the basic idea? That humans are superior species, which have been made by God for some higher purpose. ठीक है? So if we are superior species made for some higher purpose, essentially, can we say in this relationship, a special status should be given to the humans? ठीक है? A special status should be given to the human beings. And thus, the focus of human geography becomes what? It becomes study of the human and environment relationship. In fact, you can understand, अभी हमने देखा था, in present times what has happened, to some extent, human beings have been able to overcome the limitation, many type of limitations of environment. ठीक है? And again you can understand that if it is so, there is also emergence of human society relationship, as we talked about. There, that is how essentially the human geography emerges. That is why we are studying human geography. ठीक है? So what is metaphysical humanism? It simply कहता है कि that human beings are, metaphysical humanism is a philosophy that believes that humans are special species, specially created by God to achieve some higher purpose. To achieve some higher purpose. ठीक है, एनवायरनमेंट को भी गॉड ने बनाया है एंड ह्यूमन को भी गॉड ने बनाया, बट ह्यूमन को स्पेशली बनाया गया. सो दैट्स व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. द फोकस ऑफ ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी बिकम्स व्हाट, और स्टडी शुड बी ह्यूमन बीइंग्स. ठीक है, so focus of any study should be what? It should be the human beings. And when we are focusing in geography, this becomes the human geography. So this answers the question why we are studying human geography. ठीक है, ओके, आगे बढ़ते हैं. एंड 5 फीचर्स वी हैव हियर टॉक्ड अबाउट, एंड दैट इज, फर्स्ट की बात करते हैं. लेट अस टॉक अबाउट लोकेशन. So what is the fundamental question which is being asked here when we are talking about location is that how are human activities distributed across the face of the earth. That is the central fundamental question which is being asked in location. So if I just open the atlas, okay, so anything if we open which is more related with human geography, like if I open this map of density of population which is found in the world, okay, one thing becomes very clear from this. Can we say that human population distribution is uneven? Yes or no? ठीक है, it is uneven. Despite this unevenness, tell me, do you still find, is there a kind of pattern? Yes or no? Do we find that more population essentially resides in the coastal parts of the world? ठीक है, there is a distinct pattern. Another pattern very clearly you can see. Can we say that the areas which are deserts, mountains, harsh climates, are these areas which can be referred to as having lower population density? Yes or no? Obviously yes. ठीक है, so there is a pattern. देखते हैं और, like if I look into economy, is there a pattern? And is there some overlap between population and economy? Yes or no? Definitely there is. There is no doubt about this. ठीक है? And I can go on. I can take number of things. I can talk about transportation density. I can talk about various other human geography features. One thing, or I would say 2 things that will emerge. One important thing that will emerge is unevenness. And despite this unevenness, another thing that will emerge is that there are certain patterns. We can still discern certain patterns in this. Okay? That is what is essentially the logic of the idea of location. ठीक है, so इसमें एक लाइन लिखो, human beings and human activities are rarely scattered. एक मिनट को, activities are unevenly scattered over the earth's surface. Full stop. However, this distribution is rarely random. And human geography believes that there is a pattern or order in this distribution. So stop. Thus, the task of a human geographer is to identify and explain these patterns. ठीक है, तो stop. This study in human geography has came to be known as locational analysis. ठीक है, सो लोकेशनल एनालिसिस एसेंशियली क्या है? इट इज अ साइंस और इट इज द अप्रोच ऑफ ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी which is trying to do what? Which is trying to understand the logic of distribution of human activity in space. That is essentially locational science. Like for example, अगर हम देखें दिल्ली की सपोज बात करते हैं, तो दिल्ली में if you for example, if we look into Delhi, there is a central part of Delhi, areas like Chandni Chowk, ठीक है, areas like CP, these can be considered as the central part of Delhi. As we move away from this central part, in general, what happens with population density? There is a decline in population density. ठीक है, so do we find a pattern? एक पैटर्न दिख रहा है, अब इस पैटर्न को एक्सप्लेन भी कर सकते हैं. Like we can explain that why it is so, because essentially Delhi as a city, it has historical continuity. And this city, it is based upon a single nuclei model. It has grown from a nuclei. ठीक है, so first it was during the medieval period. There was essentially a medieval period में, there were so many wars etc taking place. So cities at that time used to be walled cities. ठीक है, there used to be walled cities. Cities were surrounded by walls to protect them. एंड अगर मैं अभी भी चांदनी चौक एरिया में चला जाऊं, जामा मस्जिद के पास, क्या वो वॉल्स दिखती हैं मुझे? और ये जो वॉल्स थी, इनके गेट भी हुआ करते थे. यू माइट हैव हर्ड अबाउट कश्मीरी गेट, अजमेरी गेट. ठीक है, सो एक सेंटर था. अल्टीमेटली ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम द सिटी हैज ग्रोन आउटवर्ड्स इन ऑल डायरेक्शन. And towards this center, later there was superimposition of another model of development of urbanization, which was more, if you talk about, influenced by westernization. ठीक है, और westernization में देखेंगे बाद में कि दो तरीके के मॉडल्स होते हैं. ठीक है, एक तरीके का to ultimately earn profit in the western economic model. One is it is related with supply side of economics. So if you want to earn profit, what you have to do, you have to reduce your cost. This approach is referred to as the least cost approach. Okay, and traditionally this was the approach which governed the economy. But later what happened, ultimately a new era came in and there was now a maximum revenue approach. The focus was mostly on demand. ठीक है, तो जब ब्रिटिशर्स थे तब कौन सी अप्रोच थी? इट वॉज द लीस्ट कॉस्ट अप्रोच. और अगर मुझे सपोज करो लीस्ट कॉस्ट बनाना है, कैन आई से कि अभी एक एग्जांपल गाइडेंस का ही ले लें कि अभी यहां पे क्लासरूम है एंड ऑफिस इज ऑन द मेन रोड. ठीक है, कैन आई से कि इसकी वजह से आई मस्ट बी इनकरिंग मोर कॉस्ट? यस और नो? Obviously, yes, I am incurring more cost. There has to be people here also, and there has to be people there also. Many of the things, many of the instruments, they have to be at least two, for here also, for there also. So one way is to reduce the cost is, can I say, if I concentrate all the economic activity in one point in the space, will I be able to reduce the cost? Obviously, yes. So that was the idea which influenced the Britishers. And thus they concentrated the economic activity while planning the city of Delhi. When Delhi became the capital, they constructed Connaught Place, where all the economic activities, commercial activities were to be concentrated. So Delhi has grown from where? From a single nuclei that was located towards the center. और ऑब्वियसली मुझे बताओ कि जहां पर लोगों का काम होगा, कैन आई से पीपल विल प्रेफर टू लिव देयर? ठीक है, मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल कैन नॉट इवन अफोर्ड टू लिव वेरी फार अवे फ्रॉम देयर वर्क प्लेस. बाद में देखेंगे द एंटायर लाइफ ऑफ द पीपल रिवॉल्व्स अराउंड टू प्लेसेस, होम एंड वर्क प्लेस. So obviously, can I say this pattern should be found? Obviously, yes. But ये पैटर्न इतना सिंपल नहीं है. आज के टाइम में ये पैटर्न जो है थोड़ा चेंज हो रहा है. अब ये पैटर्न कुछ कुछ ऐसा हो गया. Can I say recent time में the developmental activities have further taken place, city has been expanding. और जब सिटी एक्सपैंड करता है तो इट इज पॉसिबल कि दूर कोई सपोज करो कि एक छोटा सा सेंटर था, विल इट गेट इनकॉर्पोरेटेड विद इन द सिटी? विल इट बिकम पार्ट ऑफ द सिटी? एंड इज देयर अ पॉसिबिलिटी कि वो अपने आप में एक सेकेंडरी न्यूक्लियर बन जाए? यस और नो? So now we are finding that the density pattern in the city is not like this. This was the older density pattern. And now there is a new density pattern which has evolved. Okay. So again you can see I am not just looking into the density pattern, the locational aspect. What of location, but I am also looking into the why of location. This is essentially task of human geography. Okay. So आगे लिखो, ह्यूमन जोग्राफर्स यूज द आइडिया ऑफ लोकेशन इन टू सेंस. The idea of location in two sense. And one is essentially what we call it as absolute location, and other is the idea of relative location. The idea of relative location. ठीक है. So if you talk about what is essentially absolute location, absolute location लिखो इसको, absolute location refers to the actual site where the place is located. Actual site where the place is located, and is described in the form of latitudinal longitudinal grids. So for example, can we, where we are sitting, अभी मैं गूगल में चेक करूंगा, can I get the latitudinal and longitudinal coordinates of where I am sitting right now? ठीक है. So this is essentially what, this is absolute location. So यहां का एक एड्रेस है 3B क्रोमा बिल्डिंग. ठीक है. जो 3B नंबर है, that is basically what, that is absolute location. But what is relative location then? Relative location refers to the situation of the place. Situation of the place with respect to its surroundings. ठीक है. So that is what we call it as the relative location. So you can understand, like for example, suppose दो तरह की लैंड है. A and B. ठीक है. This A has high fertility, and B, if you talk about, is a barren land. Which of these do you think will be more costly? Can I say it will be A? हाई फर्टिलिटी वाला लैंड ही यार ज्यादा कॉस्टली होगा, इसमें सोचने की कोई बात ही नहीं है. यूपीएससी वालों को, तुम लोगों को हर चीज में ट्रिक दिखाई पड़ता है. ठीक है. तो अगर क्वेश्चन पूछा जाएगा कि हु इज द प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया, तो सोचेंगे नहीं, प्रेसिडेंट यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा है, प्रेसिडेंट हेड अभी तो मोदी है. So obviously high fertility land will have higher price. ठीक है. But think, अभी मैं यहां पर कहूं which will be more costly, B will essentially become more costly, because relatively its relative location is something which is very important, it matters. Okay, so that is we are talking, this is what we are talking about, relative location. How places, it is essentially, it is study of how locations are interrelated to each other. Okay, so that is essentially relative location. In locational analysis, the central focus, लिख लो इसको, in locational analysis, the key focus or the central focus is not just to look into the absolute location of places, but also relative location, also their relative location. So stop. In fact, it is the relative location which has allowed construction of various theories, models, theories and models in human geography. Theories and models in human geography. Okay, so that is essentially the case of location, the term location. Sometimes in human geography, the term location is treated as equivalent to another term, space. Okay, so many times, लिख लो इसको, many times in human geography, the term location has been treated as synonymous, to the term space. Okay, but obviously you can understand there is a difference between the two. Okay, so लिखो आगे. However, technically speaking, there is difference between the two. Okay, so what is essentially the difference? Space, लिखो इसको, space is a general concept of human geography, to depict the framework, in which the geographical phenomena tend to occur. ठीक है, तो कोई भी जो फिनोमेना है वो एक फ्रेमवर्क में हो रहा है, एंड दिस इज वन ऑफ द फ्रेमवर्क इज द स्पेस. इनफैक्ट दो मेजर फ्रेमवर्क हैं in which the phenomena are taking place. One, if you talk about, is the space and the other is time. ठीक है, so tell me, कोई भी phenomena है, can I say कि वो कहीं ना कहीं space और time में होगा? Yes or no? So space is a generic concept which tells us about the framework in which the activities are taking place. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल अर्थ भी स्पेस में है कहीं पर, ठीक है, एट अ टाइम, अगर हम बहुत पहले चले जाएं यूनिवर्स में, बिफोर द सोलर सिस्टम वॉज फॉर्म्ड, कैन आई से विल नॉट फाइंड अर्थ? ठीक है, सो एवरीथिंग इट इज अकरिंग in these frameworks of space and time. So this is what we essentially mean by the term space. In geography, this term space has been used in variety of ways depending upon the perspective of study. ठीक है, so जब पहले का टाइम था, जब सोसाइटी में बहुत ज्यादा स्टैटिक फीचर्स थे, मोबिलिटी वॉज वेरी लो, ठीक है, so that time the term space, if you talk about, it was described as landscape. It was referred to as landscape. ठीक है, so landscape basically क्या था? About study of regions, जो हमारा फिफ्थ पॉइंट है, विल टॉक अबाउट दैट लेटर. सो उस समय मेन स्टडी क्या था? डिस्क्रिप्शन करना, एंड डिस्क्रिप्शन में यू आर फोकसिंग अपॉन मेनी ऑफ द यूनिक फीचर्स ऑफ द गिवन स्पेस. वहां पर क्या यूनिक ह्यूमन एक्टिविटीज हो रही हैं पर्टिकुलर एरियाज में, ठीक है, सो दैट इज बेसिकली व्हाट लैंडस्केप. बट बाद में देखेंगे कि जब सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर आता है तो ज्योग्राफी का स्टेटस was started to being questioned, because second world war में geographers couldn't contribute anything in the war efforts, because वो करते क्या थे? डिस्क्राइब करते थे चीजों को, ठीक है, so they didn't had much. Geography was more encyclopedic, and thus later ultimately people started to question, ऐसे फालतू सब्जेक्ट की जरूरत क्या है? यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड, ये क्वेश्चन हमने भी अपनी स्कूल में पूछे थे, वाई ज्योग्राफी? क्योंकि पूरा डिस्क्रिप्शन ही था, द टीचर नेवर यूज टू एक्सप्लेन. उल्टा उसमें वो नर्सरी वाले इंग्लिश के टीचर को ज्योग्राफी टीचर बना देते हैं, कोई भी पढ़ा लेता है आकर के ज्योग्राफी. So ultimately, many universities, we will see, they started to drop geography as a subject, and geographers के ऊपर एक crisis of identity आ गया. They had to save their rosy roti. So ultimately the response was that the term space now got interpreted as location. ठीक है, सो इट बिकेम लोकेशन. और लोकेशन में दे स्टार्टेड टू डू व्हाट अभी हमने लिखा था, पर्टिकुलरली द रिलेटिव लोकेशन का स्टडी. इट हेल्प्स अस इन अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट? इट हेल्प्स अस इन अंडरस्टैंड वेरियस पैटर्न्स ऑफ ह्यूमन एक्टिविटीज इन स्पेस. ठीक है, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल सपोज करो कि दो प्लेसेस के बीच में वी आर फाइंडिंग ए एंड बी, and there is also C, तीन places हैं. The flow pattern between A and C is this. Flow pattern between A and B is this. So ये पैटर्न है, इसको एक्सप्लेन भी कर सकते हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल सपोज ये इंडिया है, ये चाइना है, और ये बांग्लादेश है. ठीक है, तो अब इसको एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इंडिया और बांग्लादेश में कैन वी से देयर इज लेस कॉम्प्लीमेंटारिटी एंड देयर इज मोर कॉम्पिटिशन ड्यू टू द नेचर ऑफ इकोनॉमी? yes or no? And essentially because of that what will happen? There will be low amount of mobility, the flow patterns, the trade etc. between the two countries. But can I say China के साथ there is a different scenario altogether. China is the manufacturing hub of the world. ठीक है, India, on the other hand, if you talk about, can we say still largely we are supplier of raw materials, and in many cases we are importing manufactured goods, semi finished and finished both. ठीक है, लाइक इंडिया में देयर इज अ फार्मास्यूटिकल इंडस्ट्री, बट हम फिर भी अभी भी एपीआई कहां से लेके आते हैं? चाइना से. ठीक है. So again, if you talk about, there will be greater mobility because there is more complementarity between the economies. ठीक है. So मैंने यहां पर क्या किया? Complementarity और competition का theoretical framework यूज किया. And again, I am able to explain this pattern. So does it looks, जब मैं ऐसी बातें कर रहा हूं, does it looks, the study looks more scientific? Yes or no? More logical? This is what the human geographers did at that time. ठीक है. And as they did this at that time, you can understand that they were able to showcase कर पाए कि ultimately geography is a scientific discipline. As a result, or human geography is a scientific discipline. As a result, they were able to save the status of human geography as a discipline. ठीक है. तो ये एक बात हो गई. ठीक है. तो दैट इज व्हाट इज द कंसेप्शन ऑफ लोकेशन. एंड फाइनली इफ यू टॉक अबाउट, बाद में देखेंगे 70s के बाद देयर वाज एमर्जेंस ऑफ द कंसेप्ट ऑफ प्लेस. द कंसेप्ट ऑफ प्लेस एसेंशियली एमर्ज्ड. ठीक है. So this is how ultimately the location, what is the meaning of this concept? Location. So location जब भी हम word use करेंगे, it is related with that conception of the space which developed during the decades of 1950s and 60s. ठीक है. बाद में देखेंगे इस पीरियड में जो ज्योग्राफी डेवलप हुई और एक मूवमेंट चला जिसको बोलते हैं क्वांटिटेटिव रिवोल्यूशन. ठीक है. So spatial science, locational science, as I have told you, कई बार space और location are simultaneously used. ठीक है, as synonyms. So many times locational analysis can also be called as the spatial analysis. ठीक है. So that is the case. Second आते हैं. So second itself is the term place. What is it like in a particular location? Okay, so some of you will be writing the exam in 2024. ठीक है. And some of you will qualify prelims. हो जाएगा. Once you qualify the prelims, you will be filling up a form which is DF, the detailed analysis form which is there, and in that, if you talk about particularly later, you will also have to fill up your cadre preferences. You know about the cadre preferences? ठीक है. So if you normally seen, cadre preferences में first choice क्या होता है लोगों का? It is the home cadre, and ultimately if you talk about then other states, other cadres, generally they'll try to again hover around near the home state. ठीक है. Why do you think it is so? Because you have to understand that we all have a sense of place. ठीक है? There is a mental map that we have in our mind about the places of the world. ठीक है? The places which we have visited, which we have been, can we say we are more comfortable in that? Yes or no? Obviously yes. अभी suppose करो कि you have to, और ultimately तुम्हारा सेंटर पड़ जाता है नियर बाय. राजेंद्र नगर में भी सेंटर पड़ता है, यूपीएससी का. कैन आई से कि बहुत खुश होऊंगा इफ इट इज सो, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली आई नो द प्लेस एट द बैक ऑफ माई हैंड. नो मैटर वॉट, जाम भी लगा होगा तो गलियां भी पता है. आई रीच, देर वॉज एन इंसिडेंट वेयर वन ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स गॉट 1 minute लेट एंड वॉज नॉट अलाउड टू राइट द एग्जामिनेशन. ठीक है, ये अभी का इंसिडेंट है. So can I say I will be feeling much more comfortable because it is known to me. But suppose अभी सेंटर पड़ जाता है somewhere far on the outskirts of Delhi. Can I say कि डर रहेगा? ठीक है, एग्जाम का टाइम 9 बजे भी है, 7:30 बजे पहुंच जाऊंगा. ठीक है, बिकॉज देर इज अ फियर. वी डोंट नो दैट प्लेस. वी हैव जस्ट अ काइंड ऑफ वट एवर हैज कम टू, वट एवर लिटिल नॉलेज आई हैव, दैट इज द ओनली मेंटल इमेज, मेंटल मैप दैट आई हैव अबाउट दैट पर्टिकुलर प्लेस. ठीक है, सो लोकेशन समझने की बात यहां पर यह है कि देर इज अ ऑब्जेक्टिव एलिमेंट ऑफ द लोकेशन. ठीक है, बट कैन आई से there is also subjective element of a location. ठीक है, maybe think about this. अभी हम कैडर प्रेफरेंस की बात कर रहे थे. So we would like to have our home cadres. ठीक है, बट ये हो सकता है कि इस होम कैडर में एक सिविल सर्वेंट की लाइफ बहुत पैथेटिक हो बिकॉज ऑफ द पॉलिटिसाइजेशन. एंड अदर कैडर विच आई डोंट वांट टू गो, maybe there I have more freedom to work. Maybe I will be doing better professionally. But still, what is the case? I have a sense. And we'll see, ये sense हमेशा partial होगा. Because a human being will never have complete information. It will always be partial. And it will be governed by our experiences. So there is a objective aspect of the location, but superimposed upon this objective aspect of the location is what? The subjective aspect. ठीक है, so objective aspect के basis पर मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि there is the phenomena of distance decay. ठीक है, so there is here the distance. There is the phenomena of distance decay. एक कोई सेंटर है, कैन आई से कि उसमें जो फ्लो पैटर्न है, will it reduce as you go from away from it? There will be more flow pattern coming from here compared to places located here, compared to places located here. ठीक है, so this is something which is related with the objective aspect of this the location. So अगर सपोज करो कि मुझे बर्गर खाना है, वेयर आई विल गो? नियर बाई मार्केट में. ठीक है, या इधर अप्सरा आर्केड, उधर भी है. तो ये ऑब्जेक्टिव एस्पेक्ट हो गया. बट देयर इज ऑल्सो सब्जेक्टिव एस्पेक्ट. ठीक है, हो सकता है कि गर्लफ्रेंड ने सीपी में बुलाया हो, बॉयफ्रेंड ने सीपी में बुलाया हो, इतनी भी दूर है, हो सकता है नोएडा ही चले जाएं. कुछ लोग तो 7 समुंदर पार कर लेते हैं. So there is superimposed over it what? The subjective aspect of the location. People have what? They have meanings of the places. ठीक है, जब मैं लखनऊ जाता हूं तो सपोज आई एम गोइंग फ्रॉम द एयरपोर्ट और द स्टेशन, रेलवे स्टेशन से घर की तरफ जाता हूं. ऑन द वे देयर आर मेनी स्कूल्स विच आई विल बी फाइंडिंग. बट जैसे ही मेरा स्कूल आएगा, what will happen? There will be many memories which will crop in my mind. I'll feel emotional. ठीक है? So that same location for a stranger who has never been there, उसके लिए it has nothing to do. It is just one point in space. But for me, it is essentially what? It has several meanings. ठीक है, और ये मीनिंग्स ह्यूमन बिहेवियर को गवर्न करते हैं. दे अफेक्ट अवर डिसीजन मेकिंग. थिंक अबाउट इट. एक टॉपिक हमें पढ़ना है अबाउट द टेररिज्म, एंड वन एस्पेक्ट ऑफ टेररिज्म इज इंटरनल टेररिज्म, नक्सलिज्म फॉर एग्जाम्पल. कैन आई से द फाइट is essentially of this meaning of the sense of place? For us, those places are essentially what? Something having resource, land ka piece hai, nothing else. But can I say for them it is their home? It is their home. And they want to fight. कोई हमारे घर में आकर के घुस के आ जाएगा और कहेगा तुम जाओ. Will we not fight? Obviously will do. हो सकता है कि हम अर्बन फेलोज नहीं फाइट करेंगे, कहेंगे कितना पैसा दोगे. But people whose life is more static, there is more pause in their life, they have spent more time there, they will definitely have a bigger emotional connect. ठीक है, so this is what we mean by the term place. Today, the central theme of space in human geography has become the concept of place. We analyze everything from the perspective of how places are and how these conceptions of the places affect the decision making. ठीक है, so एक दो लाइनें लिख लेते हैं इसमें. Human geographers are also interested in finding out what locations are actually like to live and work. And to visit. So stop. How have human beings converted? How have human beings converted the locations of the Earth's surface into their home? So stop. Human geographers endeavor to find out how culture develops differently in different places. So stop. They believe that human beings attach emotions significance and values to locations. Full stop. In doing so, they turn empty locations and environments into intensely meaningful places. Okay. So this is the second important theme, very important theme, which is part and parcel of human geography. Then third very important theme is the human environment interaction. Human environment interaction. So here the question is, what is the relationship between human and their environment? What is the relationship between human and their environment? So tell me, do we have a kind of relationship with the environment? Yes or no? We have different type of relationships with the environment. As human beings, we have different type of relationships. So tell me, it is very clear, one thing is very clear, that this relationship between human and environment, can I say it is it two-way? Okay. So this two-way relationship is what we call it as the dialectic relationship. So write it. There is a dialectic relationship between human and their environment. Full stop. Societies exist by metabolizing resources from their surrounding natural environments. So stop. In making earth as a home, humans necessarily enter into relationship with natural environment. Into relationship with natural environment. So when we are making our homes, we are entering into relationship. Earth as our home, we are existing here on the basis of metabolization of resources. That means use of the resources which are provided by the natural environment. Okay. Now it is pretty much clear, one thing is there. While doing so, do we create ecological footprints? That means, are we affecting the environment? But can I say, are we also affected by the environment? The environment also affects us in many ways. For example, Suppose if I want to essentially grow rice, can I say desert में large scale rice production possible नहीं है? Because rice is essentially what? It is a water intensive crop. So the nature is putting what? Limitation on our activities. Which activities can be done and which cannot be. If I want to create a very large city like Delhi in Himalayas, can I say there is a limitation? Okay. If we are crossing the limitations, do we find that the phenomena like this year we have seen Himachal Pradesh, so many landslides occur? So we are punished for that in the form of hazards and disasters. Okay. So this is what we are talking about when we are talking about human and environment interaction. So एक point और लिखो आगे. In doing so, humans create ecological footprints as they affect environment. Full stop. However, the natural environments also exert a reciprocal influence over the humans. ठीक है. एक और पॉइंट लिखो. ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी examines how society uses natural resources and what are the factors which determine this use. ठीक है. So that is what we are talking about, the human environment interaction. There are number of type of factors which are affecting their use. अभी हमने एक factor की बात की, the limitations imposed by the environment. That is one factor only. But can I say the resource use is determined by several other factors? Like for example, एक factor है, can we say it is population growth? Yes or no? If there is greater population, what will happen? We will be requiring more resources. But that is not the only factor. Another factor is also there. It is also the culture. Culture is also a very big factor which is affecting the utilization of resources. Okay, like for example, at present we find that ourselves to be very much governed by consumerist cultures. और बाद में देखेंगे consumerist culture में क्या होता है. In consumerist culture, the one who consumes more, who has greater consumption, is given higher status in the society. ठीक है. तो अभी iPhone 15 आने वाला है, आ गया है, तो कितने सारे crazy, ultimately they are already crazy for it. What it is going to do, उसमें मेमोरी भी नहीं है यार ढंग की. What it is going to do, ultimately we ask him, it is only what? A status symbol. Okay? So there are several factors which are affecting this relationship. And many of these factors have evolved with time. Like for example, if we go back in human history, we find that this relationship was more simple. Can we say the relationship was more deterministic? It was more deterministic. Environment used to ultimately control our needs. But with time, as our technology has evolved, as it has developed, we have got more control over the environment. And now various other factors, economic reasons or cultural reasons have become more important in fact. So you can understand, अगर पहले के टाइम में even if it was economically benefit, people will still think 100 times before doing or suppose cutting a tree. But now can we say our activities are very much governed by the economic motives? They are very much governed by the economic motives. बाद में देखेंगे आईपीसीसी की रिपोर्ट्स आ रही हैं ग्लोबल वार्मिंग को लेकर के. अब पेरिस एग्रीमेंट में बहुत सारे साइंटिस्ट पहुंच गए and they suggested कि let's go and put some aerosols in the stratosphere, and ultimately what will happen, less sunlight will be reaching the earth's surface and will be able to control global warming. Can you imagine the stupidity? What other consequences it will have? They didn't think about that, but that is one of the options which is available. And again, economic needs, cultural needs, if you talk about, they are more important. Many of the things which we are doing, they can just be explained by economic rationals, nothing else. और वो भी certain people's economic rational. हमारे लिए वो इकोनॉमिकली रैशनल नहीं है, वो बेवकूफ़ी कहलाती. ठीक है. So that is what we are talking about, the human environment interactions. तो आगे लिखो इसमें, human environment interactions are controlled by various factors, including the limitations imposed by nature and the socio-economic progress made by the human beings. Full stop. In the early times, the natural limitations tended to dominate. Natural limitations tended to dominate the humans' exploitation of resources. Full stop. However, in the Anthropocene, it is the economic and cultural factors which become dominating. So stop. Based on this, two basic perspectives have developed. Two basic perspectives have developed to study this human environment interactions. And these two perspectives are deterministic, and if you talk about the second is possibilistic. So two broad perspectives have developed through which these are the lenses through which we are looking into the human activity. One is the deterministic perspective and other, if you talk about, is the possibilistic perspective. ठीक है, लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर मुझे कहीं का डेवलपमेंट लेवल एक्सप्लेन करना, ठीक है, कैन आई यूज अ डिटर्मिनिस्टिक पर्सपेक्टिव टू एक्सप्लेन दैट? Like one of the deterministic perspective will be, can we say that the development will be governed by the availability of natural resource? ठीक है, if there is more natural resources, there will be more development. These natural resources can range from can be number of things. Like for example, land itself is a resource. So a place where there is availability of flat land, can I say there is a greater possibility that there will be more development compared to an area which is hilly and mountainous? ठीक है, so again there is what, the availability of the resource. Same with water, same if you talk about with mineral and other type of resources, it is governing factor. But इसका भी काउंटर है. कैन आई से अगर यही सही होता तो if it was so, Japan should have been one of the backward countries of the world. ठीक है, we are talking about the areas like deserts which are underdeveloped. You go and see China, what it is doing to Xinjiang. You talk about Saudi Arabia. This year the total import of wheat by Saudi Arabia was very less because they were able to grow wheat in desert. ठीक है, so there is also what, a possibilistic perspective of explaining the phenomena. Can we say the reality will be somewhere in between this? There will be, at the present level of technology, we cannot have complete control over nature. ठीक है, but there is no doubt that we have modified several aspects of nature with our technology. ठीक है, so that is the human environment interaction. You know that determinism, possibilism, it will come later on. So that is one thing. Then the next, if you talk about, is movement. That is understanding how and why are places connected with one another. How and why the places are connected with one another. So tell me, can we say, अगर हम आज के डेट में देखें तो there is a phenomena which is referred to as globalization. ठीक है, सपोज मुझे ग्लोबलाइजेशन को एक डायग्राम से डिपिक्ट करना, हाउ आई विल डू दैट? कैसे कर सकते हैं? कनेक्ट कर देंगे सबको एक साथ. क्या क्या कनेक्ट करेंगे? ओके, टेल मी, ऑब्वियसली ये अर्थ जैसा बिल्कुल नहीं है, बट फिर भी मान लेते हैं कि ये अर्थ है. इज दिस हैपनिंग इन ग्लोबलाइजेशन? yes or no? There is time and space convergence taking place, and the earth as we know, has it become smaller? If I want to today reach somewhere, can I say I can reach very fast? Even if not me physically, virtually I can be present anywhere in the world. ठीक है, my ideas can flow. So have the places become more interconnected with each other? Obviously they have become more and more interconnected with each other. So what are the reasons? why these interconnectedness would have developed, what are the factors which are governing this relationship, and what is the impact it has on various other domains of human activity. Like for example, what impact globalization or this interconnectedness has had on us. Number of things we'll talk about, starting from the resource use, or whether you talk about agriculture, whether you talk about industry, whether you talk about population, whether you talk about urbanization. It has had so much of impact. Do you really think कि अभी जो हमारा lifestyle है, has it anything to do with India or the Indian culture? Very limited. It has to do something, no doubt. Otherwise तो geography को तुम लोग अगर ऐसे ना बोलोगे तो खत्म हो गया geography. Geography will always be there. But ultimately there is huge modification which has taken place. So geographers का एक बहुत ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी में एक बहुत की थीम है दिस इंटरकनेक्टेडनेस, दिस टाइम स्पेस कन्वर्जेंस, एंड along with that the time space distancing, how these are affecting the human activities on the surface of the earth. ठीक है, तो इसमें भी एक लाइन लिखते हैं. Societies are increasingly becoming interconnected. Increasingly becoming interconnected with one another. Full stop. It means that it makes sense. It makes sense to study places, only in relation to the wider networks, in which they are enmeshed. Wider networks in which they are enmeshed, meshed into each other. ठीक है, like for example, think, can you imagine Gurgaon being Gurgaon without Delhi? It couldn't have been. ठीक है, today if you look into the real estate prices in Gurgaon, they are ultimately skyrocketing. They are in a different domain altogether. But you cannot imagine Gurgaon being Gurgaon without its nearness to Delhi. ठीक है? And every place today has become what? It has become more and more interconnectedness in the modern society. मैंने बताया था, इसका reason बहुत simple है. What has happened with the population growth? There is increased competition for the resources. As a result, there is now specialization which has taken place. This specialization has led to what? Technological development. And essentially, as a result of both of these, what has occurred? There is greater mobility now taking place. And thus what is taking place now, the places are so much interconnected to each other. ठीक है? It is not just function of this, it is function of other factors as well. It is function of culture. ठीक है? It is function of culture as well. Suppose मेरा कल्चर ही कंज्यूमरिज्म का कल्चर है, वेयर नॉर्मल मेरा सर्वाइवल 100 रुपए में हो जाता है, लेकिन सर्वाइव करने के लिए मुझे 1000 रुपए चाहिए, बिकॉज आई हैव टू शो ऑफ ऑल्सो. ठीक है? So ultimately what I will do? Ultimately I will not be satisfied with what I have. I will look into what others have. I'll try to take from them. Can I say this ultimately led to the phenomena of colonization? That was essentially colonization. And if you talk about today, we are talking about a era of new colonization, which has been ushered in by globalization, an era of economic colonization. ठीक है, it is increasingly taking place. अभी recently में there were countries like Niger etc. were in very much news, because ultimately if you talk about, there were several coups in taking place in West Africa, and they want to ultimately become independent. And you can understand, one of the countries, if you talk about, it was selling uranium to France. The price, if you talk about, at which it was selling, it was ridiculously so much low. Ridiculous low. The same amount of uranium, if you talk about, it was costing around $200 if you buy from Canada. But the same amount of uranium they were able to buy from this country for about $0.8. Can you imagine? So we are in the era of another form of colonialism is taking place today. It is economic colonization. Okay. So if you talk about, there is interaction, so many societies are interacting with each other, and this is one feature which is being studied by the human geography. ठीक है, तो आगे लिखो, places, as places interact, a hierarchical network often forms in which only the dominant places ठीक है, इन डोमिनेंट प्लेसेस को हम क्या बोलते हैं? कोर. गेट टू डिसाइड द डायरेक्शन ऑफ मूवमेंट्स. Full stop. Thus, these hierarchical networks also reveal the core periphery relationships. That exist in the world. To understand these networks or interactions, geographers क्या करते हैं? They use a concept. ठीक है, and this concept is the concept of diffusion. Particularly, you can understand ये जो interactions होते हैं, ये interactions can be manifested in many forms. They can be manifested in movement of material things, but sometimes they can be manifested also in the movement of non-material things. Like for example, ideas, culture, technology. So ultimately what happens? There is diffusion of ideas, diffusion of knowledge taking place. Always what happens? Knowledges, ideas, innovations, they emerge from places referred to as earth. And from there what happens? They diffuse into space. ठीक है. So बहुत सारे जो कल्चरल फिनोमेना है वो किसी पर्टिकुलर प्लेसेस से ओरिजिनेट हुए. लाइक बाद में देखेंगे एग्रीकल्चरल हर्ट्स, लिंग्विस्टिक हर्ट्स, रिलीजियस हर्ट्स, they all emerged from one place, and then what happened? They distributed, they diffused in space. And again, if they have diffused, can we say there will be interconnectedness? ठीक है, so लिख लो इसको. Human geographers use the idea of diffusion to track the spread of humans and their activities from the place of origin. Place of origin, this place of origin को और क्या बोलते हैं? It is referred to as earth. अर्थ. तो स्टॉप, आगे लिखो. अल्टीमेटली द बेसिक आइडिया इन ह्यूमन ज्योग्राफी is to understand these patterns of interactions. These patterns of interaction. Then ultimately the fifth conception, regions. So here we are concerned about how and why is one area similar or different to another. Okay, so if I think about, suppose I take the case of Uttar Pradesh and I take the case of Tamil Nadu. ये दो places हैं. Can I say they can be seen as similar to each other? What is the similarity? Number of similarities मिल जाएंगी हमें. Like one common similarity will be, are both these places affected by monsoon type of climate? Obviously yes. और अगर monsoon type of climate same type of physical factor affect कर रहा है, does it means that there might be some similarities in culture as well? Yes or no? So tell me, do we find that both these places, do they celebrate seasons or festivals like harvest? Yes or no? Makar Sankranti with different names are celebrated at both places. ठीक है. Also there are other similarities, like for example you will find that there is lots of cultural similarity in them. Even racial similarities would be found. Like for example, large population in the North Indian plains, if you talk about, they belong to a race which is referred to as Mediterranean. Mediterranean is the most dominant race of India. And again we will be finding Mediterranean race is again dominating where? In Tamil Nadu. ठीक है. So there is a similarity we find, but differences भी हैं. Are they also different from each other? They are also different from each other. Places can have their unique features as well. Despite some common patterns, they can display variety of unique features as well. Like for example, can we say दोनों में language जो बोली जाती है बिल्कुल different है? ठीक है. If we are talking about the physical features, in general, we will be finding there are several bodily features which are different. ठीक है. So number of differences, if you talk about, would also be found. Physical factors में is there difference in the topography, which is found in Uttar Pradesh and which is found in Tamil Nadu. So every place will also have its own unique characteristics. And geography, human geography, also wants to understand what? This uniqueness. That is also one of the purpose of human geography. ठीक है. So that is basically what is the study of regions. So इसमें एक दो लाइनें लिखो. Human geographers often group places. Human geographers often group places that share particular characteristics into larger regions. Full stop. Regions are parts of the Earth's surface which display certain kind of homogeneity or interconnectedness between parts. Interconnectedness between parts on the basis of chosen criteria. On the basis of chosen criteria. ठीक है. So this is what we mean by the region. अगर मैंने कोई क्राइटेरिया चूज किया, जैसे अभी हमने लैंग्वेज का क्राइटेरिया चूज किया, तो उत्तर प्रदेश में सारे लोग क्या बोलते हैं? हिंदी. While in Tamil Nadu, majority of the people are speaking what? Tamil. So there is homogeneity with respect to the selected criteria. ठीक है. और there is interconnectedness. Like Delhi region की बात करें, तो the places surrounding Delhi, they are more connected with Delhi compared to Mumbai. Yes or no? So there is a Delhi region, even if they look dissimilar. So this is what we essentially mean by the term regions. Regions, if you talk about, has been very dominant theme of human geography, which has existed in human geography. It is one of the most ancient themes of human geography. You can understand, पहले के टाइम में ज्योग्राफी तो एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करता था. देयर वाज नॉलेज. ठीक है. ये नॉलेजेस को बाद में सेग्रीगेट किया गया जब बहुत ज्यादा रेनेसां के बाद डिस्कवरीज हुई और बहुत इंफॉर्मेशन इकट्ठा हो गया. देन इट बिकेम वेरी difficult for one person to study everything, and thus there was what? Specialization, and this specialization led to birth of subjects. Before there was only knowledge which existed, and when there was this knowledge which existed, geography की अगर हम बात करें, जो हम डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन और ह्यूमन एनवायरनमेंट रिलेशनशिप की बात कर रहे हैं, टेल मी, कैन आई से कि पहले अगर ये सब्जेक्ट पढ़ा जाता होगा एंशिएंट टाइम्स में, तो what would have been the general tendency? Can we say कि कौन पैट्रनेज देता होगा पढ़ने के लिए? Kings, rulers, and for them was it beneficial to know about particular places and their interesting characteristics, unique characteristics? Will it make them easier to manage those places? ठीक है. So essentially, regional geography or study of regions is something which has great antiquity in human geography, and it has continued. It has been an unbroken theme in human geography throughout. It is said to have been broken only in the period of quantitative revolution, 1950 and 60s. But even then there are evidences that the study of regions continued, although it was not a dominant approach of geography. Beginning of 1970s, again there was re-emergence of new regions. A new conception of regions came. In fact, this new conception of region, today we are calling it as the place. ठीक है. So that is what we mean by the term region. So इसमें एक और लाइन लिख लो. Study of regions has been an unbroken theme since the time of Greco-Roman geography. Since the times of Greco-Roman geography. Full stop. It is said to be, it is said to have reached its nadir. It is said to have reached its nadir. Nadir is the lowest point during the 1950s and 60s. Due to dominance of locational analysis. Full stop. Yet, since 1970s, the theme of region, has dominated the intellectual spheres of human geography. The intellectual spheres of human geography. ठीक है, so this is what we mean by the term regions. So region में focus क्या होता है? We will see later. Region is basically what? It is a unit, and in this unit it has a boundary, a defined boundaries are present, and it has several subparts. Ultimately, if you talk about these within the regions, its parts are connected with each other. That is what we mean by a region, and this interconnectedness, it gives it a unique identity compared to the other areas. It can be differentiated from other regions on the basis of the selected criteria. Okay? So that is what we mean by the study of regions in human geography. Okay? So that is the 5 elements of which are essential to the study of human geography. ठीक है, अब you can understand, अगर suppose करो, if I have to write about certain question like describe the characteristics of Delhi. Now think, can I think about Delhi as a location? Can I think about Delhi as a place? Can I think about Delhi where the interaction between human and environment is taking place? Do we see there is ecological footprints? Very large ecological footprints are seen in the form of pollution and several type of problems which are being faced by Delhi. And can we say other things like there is so much movement? Is Delhi connected with several places? If you talk about, can Delhi be, or can we talk about Delhi region? NCR, for example, have you heard about NCR? So can we call it as a Delhi region? Obviously, yes. Okay. So again, if I just have to write about the characteristics of Delhi, these elements of human geography, they give us a framework in which we can essentially write it. ठीक है, तो आज के लिए बंद करते हैं. We'll continue this tomorrow and hopefully you'll revise. We'll further talk about some concepts and we'll talk about the syllabus, etc., number of things. Okay, goodbye all of you who are watching online. We'll meet tomorrow same time, or like भूलना मत। तो जो लोग ऑफलाइन बैठे हुए हैं तुम लोगों के लिए भी है वो लाइक इम्पॉर्टेंट है।